None of the prophecies said we couldn't have just a little fun. First Strike is out, Rosetta is inbound, and I see an opportunity. So today I'm going to tell you about my big bet on Aurora. A huge shout out to our channel members for supporting what we do here. If you want to get involved with the channel and the Dice Commando community, please consider joining as a channel member. Remember, these videos are only possible with your support. You can show that support with a like, a subscribe, and by leaving us a comment and sharing your feedback. Community first, and go Commando. What we wanted to do is today talk about a new game that Amy and I are getting into, we're checking out that is, and we just kind of wanted to do a quick rundown of what the game is and what we're going to be doing with it. So as I alluded to in the intro, this is made by Legendary Story Studios, and they are a Kiwi company, so go Kiwis. This game is relatively new, actually just released October 14th, so just about a week ago, a little more than a week ago. It's pretty
really new.
Really new from its official release. Hey there, my flesh and blood friends. Welcome back to Dice Commando and Go Again, a fabulous cast, and I hope you enjoyed that little gem of an interlude there. That's right, that harkens all the way back to episode 001 of Go Again, a fabulous cast, where, that's right, you noticed I had a partner there. That was my wife, Amy. We were going into this game together, and that little excerpt sets the background for today's video and the big bet that I'm about to make. So the long story short there is as Amy and I started exploring the game together, she just realized that it was just, she just wasn't having fun with it because of how complicated it was, right? She wanted something more straightforward, and that is perfectly okay. She is an engineer, kick-ass woman, nothing on her intelligence. She just didn't enjoy, right, when she sat down to do something fun, she didn't enjoy the complexity of the game at the time. And I think that that's completely fair. So you can see where I'm going with this. We now have who I consider to be, or at least appears on the surface to be, Lightning Phi, Aurora. And she's cool, and she's a female, and she looks awesome, and the art's super cool, and she has just a go lightning ping 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 theme. And I think, that's right, I think this is my opportunity, it's my last big bet to get my wife back into the game. 5 years later, almost nearly 5 years later, that's right, we're going to try this again. So why am I talking about Aurora as being Lightning Phi in that context? You all know I love Phi, right? Huge sweet spot in my life for Phi. And I also think that heroes like Phi are very important for a game like this, right? To have that easy entry-level hero where you can kind of just play cards from your hand, but there's a challenge to it and there's growth to it, right? So someone like Dash, for example, is a great starting point because you can just boost and go, but then you start to learn, okay, well, if I do a 4 first and I get the on hit, or if I do a bunch of 3s and then I can do my max velo, you start to really learn those combo lines as you go. And you find success along the way because sometimes aggro decks just do what aggro decks are supposed to do. So I think it's very important to have a deck like that actively in the meta. You know, maybe not to the Zen quality, but I think Phi really was like the perfect scratch that itch kind of hero, you know, after the stubbies and all that stuff like that. After that all got hammered out, I think Phi was perfect in that. We are, you know, the next one I have there is we are losing Dash soon, right? And I think in both CC, in Blitz certainly, probably like hours after I shoot this video, and we're going to lose her at some point very soon in Classic Constructed as well. And I think that's a huge loss for the game. Certainly because of the fact that she'll be the first OG hero that goes, very likely. So there's that part of it. But it's also just, she's very simple to play at an entry level. And that's a good thing, right? But yet she has a lot of complexity. I mean, Dash has been number 1 on my, you know, best heroes to pick up, I think twice in the last 3 or 4 years. I don't remember whether it's her or Bravo, but she's certainly been on the list in like either 1 or 2 position for that very reason, and kind of applying it again to my Lightning Phi argument. And I really see Aurora filling that very similar role. And, you know, we don't have her full kit yet and stuff, but I think it's very clear that you can see those lines. And on top of that, it really helps that Aurora is a first strike deck hero. And I think she's actually the simpler of the 2 first strike heroes, because you just kind of have to do your math and figure it out, and you'll learn as you go on, you know, okay, now I'm going to do this, then I'm going to Starfall, and then I'm going to end my chain with a Harness Lightning, and well, that was a pretty good little chain I just figured out. I blocked with 1 card, came with 3. I learned my sequencing, I got it all right, maximized my value. Even if you end up losing the game, you're presented with a bunch of little problems within the game over the course of the game that you can feel good that you solved. And it helps you walk away feeling like even if you lost the game, you still did a good job and you still grew, right? And that is something that these simpler decks do offer a newer player, right? Whether they're new to gaming or whether they're new to Flesh and Blood, having those incremental wins is really important because let's be honest, you're not going to show up and win a bunch of games. So you have to be able to leave with something that makes you feel good. And sitting down with a super complicated deck that might not work out if you don't pitch stack right, it's going to be very difficult to walk away with those little incremental wins. But something that's straightforward, you can just dump on the table. It very much is. So when we were headed down to Queenstown, my wife wanted a refresher on how the game worked so that she could speak intelligently to the folks there, which is completely admirable. So we spent a lot of time. I built her a commoner dash deck, and we spent time running that into, I think I had a Phi deck and other stuff that was relatively simple, so we could swap if we wanted. And it really helped her pick up the basics, and she had some success, and she was, again, figuring out those problems as we went. And that's why I think Aurora really is going to scratch that itch. She has the ability to do these just straight, long chains. And by straight, what I mean is not overly complicated to sequence. I mean, I would say that, if you look at Zen as an entry-level hero, some of his sequencing can be a little harder, right? Because you have to do the instant to get the thing and tutor out and make sure that you line up your tigers just right. So having that straight chain in this definition it's also a little forgiving. Sure, it would be better if you led with your Bittering Thorns, for example. But if you come in with it second, it's not the end of the world, right? It doesn't punish you for that. Whereas like of Zen, if you sequence your tigers wrong, your combo just fizzles, right? So that's why I think that something like a dash, well, I guess dash doesn't really matter because she just boosty and goes, but something like a Phi, something like Aurora are really good as teaching tools and to get someone really on board and up to speed and grow their own confidence. And on top of that, I see Aurora as being a little harder, and I think that's okay. Because as I mentioned just previously, she'll be more forgiving because if the sequencing is off, you're not necessarily going to tank yourself, right? But you'll also realize halfway through, like, oh, this didn't work out the way I wanted it to. I didn't get that lightning card in, so now I'm going to lose go again. But I can arsenal this card and try again, right? So, and I think it's also important to have those oopsie moments. Which, don't get me wrong, there's plenty of oopsie moments in Flesh and Blood. We've all been there, right? But you still want to have that oopsie moment within a, okay, this is survivable, as opposed to an oopsie moment of, oh, I just lost the game, right? So I think it's okay to have that. Plus, let's think about the low barrier explosivity that she has as a Runeblade, right? Something like a Revel in Runeblood, the first time you pull that, think about it. The first time you pull off a Revel in Runeblood, you're like, I shouldn't be able to do that, right? That's pretty good. But you need to be able to figure it out and sequence it in order to do so. So that's a learning moment. You get a huge payoff from it. And all of a sudden, you're throwing a bunch of damage. I'm also very, very, very excited. It's my favorite card from the set so far, which is what I'm calling Rune Grenade. That's right, it's Burn Up Shock. I love the fact that you can lead with this and then come with like a couple of 4s. And it works on Starfall too, which is awesome. And just threaten that. Now your opponent has to block, make tough decisions. You're pinging runes in there while you're going. Maybe maybe not runes, but arcane, as it may be. I think it's really cool, and I think it'll appeal to somebody to have multiple options. And really, I'm hoping it will appeal to a certain someone to really help get her on board with this. And whether or not it succeeds for my wife or not, I do think that Aurora as a hero, I think that betting on her as a good teaching hero, as a good learning hero, and something to onboard with, I think is right. And I'm very excited about it for the future of Flesh and Blood once we get some of the current things cleaned up a little bit so that you don't sit down with Aurora and have a good 12 or 13 point turn and then get cracked back for 60, right? That's just the reality of the situation we're in right now. But I have every confidence that it'll get fixed because I am super excited about the future and I really want to give a shout out to Legend Story Studios and the design on this, and not just the design on her, but they didn't have to bring an entry hero like this, but they did because it holds value. And I think they agree with the concept that having a simple, straightforward, yet explosive and rewarding entry-level hero is really a lot of value. So last point I want to talk about is what, in my opinion, Aurora needs to land. And by that, what I mean is be at least a tier 2 hero. Because let's be honest, if she comes out and she's bad, that's not super sellable. And bad is with air quotes in this game. Let's be very clear. I want to completely acknowledge that. Okay. But if she comes out and she's like a tier 3 hero, even if she's like, don't get mad at me, Boltyn people, but if she's like a Boltyn where sometimes she's just not great, and that's, I'm not making the analogy to the combo deck. I'm making an analogy to like in some metas just can't do anything, right? If she's like that, she'll still attract people. People will still be like wanting to play her, wanting to explore her, but I don't think it's going to land the same on an entry level as someone like a Dash did or someone like a Fi did. So what she needs to land, and this is tough because as of now in spoiler season, we haven't seen any of her specializations. We actually won't see those until World Premiere. Apparently, it's really hard to put into context what Aurora is going to do. And one thing I think the community at large, especially the entrenched players, are going to constantly, even just subconsciously, hold against Aurora is, well, she's not as good as Briar. And I think that's going to inherently forever be true unless she has just completely a bonker specializations, which is possible. But only having the one talent, and you're always going to be comparing her to Briar, right, if you were there during the time. So I do think that's a bit of a trap. And I do have to say in commoner, the fact that, you know, Aurora is not going to be as good. She's just not as Briar and commoner. I think that maybe does hurt that a little bit from the entry standpoint. But again, if Aurora can come out with just some stupid, I mean, not stupid, right? But some really cool specializations that do multi-damage pings or help her go or something like that. I mean, let's think like Art of War, but not Art of War, right? Something that gives her +1s or something that gives her a Sting of Sorcery type effect or something like that, right? Or a card draw threat, right? Maybe she has a lightning snatch or something like that. I don't know, right? But something in those lines where there's some really cool, awesome payoff that's only hers. And then players will want to align to that because she has this really cool thing. And I also think that that's important to have other players align to it, because if you as a new player come in or, you know, transfer over and you're like, oh, I identify with Aurora, I really want to play her, and you sit down and there's someone else at your armory who's just kicking teeth, well, who's playing Aurora, I mean, you're going to be very encouraged to continue to improve, as opposed to, and I guess maybe that's more what I meant from my heart on the Boltyn thing is, you know, it's very rare to see multiple Boltyn players at your armory, right? Usually there's like the Boltyn dude or gal or person, whatever. And having someone else that you can see and look up to and talk to and learn from also has a lot of value within community and building and getting that person to stick around. So I really think it's important that Aurora lands at least as like a tier 2 hero with some really cool things to do, but yet remains that simplicity, right? So Lightning Fi, I think, is a very fair analogy here on the role that we need her to fill, or at least I need her to fill to be successful and land on that. And I guess that's my piece, right? So wish me luck as this set comes up. The art also has to matter. I'll say I am a little concerned. We saw a lot of Runeblade commons this week, and the theme doesn't fit. All the Runeblade commons that we saw have like the standard Runeblade, like doom, death, blood, bleh art, which is completely fine and completely cool, but it doesn't fit the Aria theme, right? So that was a little weird. I am hoping that we get some really cool, sparky kind of, you know, Aria theme lightning stuff that'll fit into Aurora. And I'm sure that her specializations will fit her, and I'm sure it'll be fine, right? But it's just kind of weird. You got all these lightning cards, and you're like, well, I want to hit the high note, and you're like, well, why is this goth person on here, or whatever it may be. So anyway, but that's just an aside. I don't think it'll end up mattering in the long run, but very, very, very excited for this. So let me know your thoughts below. Do you agree with me? Hopefully you don't disagree that there's value in having simple, straightforward decks. I think we can all acknowledge that, especially in a skill game like Flesh and Blood, it's frustrating when those type of decks start to dominate, right? I think we can all agree that. But it doesn't have to be a problem statement if it's someone who can come up and every now and then trip their way to an armory win. I don't think that's a bad thing. I don't think that's a bad thing at all. So anyway, let me know what you're thinking. If you agree, if you disagree. Thanks, folks, for tuning in. Go Aurora and go Commando.